This is Land of Havilah, 2 Kings 12. Joash began to reign in Jerusalem over Judah at the age of 7. Of course, Jehoiada the priest was really in charge until Joash gradually became of age. The text calls him Joash and Jehoash. He inherited a country in shambles, but the people have rededicated themselves to Yahweh. Verse 1. Jehoash began to reign in the 7th year of Jehu, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. Jehoash did that which was right in Yahweh's eyes all his days in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. However, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. Comment: Joash did the right thing as long as Jehoiada was alive, 2 Chronicles 24:2. But the high places were not taken away, meaning the people were still sacrificing and burning incense to Yahweh or even to other gods on the tops of hills and mountains, 1 Kings 3:3. According to the law of Moses, all such high places should be destroyed, Deuteronomy 12:12, and there should be no sacrifice or burning of incense except through the priesthood at the temple in Jerusalem, Deuteronomy 12:13 and 14. So Joash and Jehoiada should have destroyed these high places. Coming up, Jehoash wants to collect money to repair the temple because in the previous generation, quote, the sons of Athaliah, that wicked woman, had broken up Yahweh's house, and they also gave all the dedicated things of Yahweh's house to the Baals, 2 Chronicles 24:7. So the temple is damaged and its valuables have been looted. Verse 4. Jehoash said to the priests, all the money of the holy things that is brought into Yahweh's house, in current money, the money of the people for whom each man is evaluated, and all the money that it comes into any man's heart to bring into Yahweh's house, let the priest take it to them, each man from his donor, and they shall repair the damage to the house wherever the damage is found. But it was so that in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired the damage to the house. Comment: according to the law of Moses, all the funds coming into Yahweh's house on a regular basis are rightfully the personal possession of the priests and Levites, Leviticus 5:15, Leviticus 7:7, and Numbers chapter 18. There weren't usually any specific funds coming in to repair the temple. In verses 4 and 5, it's hard to tell exactly what Joash commanded, but pretty clearly in 2 Chronicles 24, verse 5, he told them, quote, go out to the cities of Judah and gather money to repair the house of your God from all Israel year to year, end quote. In other words, take a special collection in every city year by year to repair the house. But the Levites simply didn't do what he said, and certainly they weren't going to use their own money to repair the temple. In verse 6, when Jehoash was in his 23rd year, which would make him 30 years of age, he noticed the repairs still weren't done. Coming up, he wants to know why. Verse 7. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest and for the other priests, and said to them, why don't you repair the damage to the house? Now therefore take no more money from your treasurers, but deliver it for repair of the damage to the house. The priests consented that they should take no more money from the people and not repair the damage to the house. Comment: Jehoash said to the priests and Levites, keep no more money for yourselves, put it all toward temple repairs. But it just wasn't going to happen like that. The priests and Levites had personal claim to the money. They were cowards for not standing up and saying so, but rather in quiet disregard and lack of fear for Joash, they just left the temple as it was. But coming up, Jehoiada the priest will finally step in with a solution that's going to work. Verse 9. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in its lid and set it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into Yahweh's house, and the priests who kept the threshold put all the money that was brought into Yahweh's house into it. When they saw that there was much money in the chest, the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put it in bags and counted the money that was found in Yahweh's house. Comment: they set out a chest so the public could drop in money specifically for the repair work. Every time the chest was full, the king sent over his scribe to join the high priest in counting and bagging the money, and over time they, quote, gathered money in abundance, 2 Chronicles 24:11. The people were giving toward the project with rejoicing, 2 Chronicles 24:10. Verse 11. They gave the money that was weighed out into the hands of those who did the work, who had the oversight of Yahweh's house, and they paid it out to the carpenters and the builders who worked on Yahweh's house, and to the masons and the stone cutters, and for buying timber and cut stone to repair the damage to Yahweh's house, and for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. Comment, they used the money toward the project, verse 13. But there were not made for Yahweh's house cups of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, any vessels of gold or vessels of silver of the money that was brought into Yahweh's house, for they gave that to those who did the work and repaired Yahweh's house with it. Comment, from information here and 2 Chronicles 24:14, first they did the repairs to the building and didn't worry about replacing the holy objects inside. But when they completed the repairs, they had money left over, so then they went ahead and replaced the holy objects, the gold and silver snuffers, basins, trumpets, and vessels. Joash kept tabs on the whole thing through his scribe, probably because he saw what happened before, that when he took a hands-off approach, it just didn't get done. Verse 15. Moreover, they didn't demand an accounting from the men in whose hand they delivered the money to give to those who did the work, for they dealt faithfully. Comment, the craftsmen were more trustworthy with the money than the priests and Levites had been. They didn't say, okay, we'll do it, like the priests and Levites, and then fail to get it done. They didn't need a representative from the king to check on them, like the priests. They took the money and produced results. Verse 16. The money for the trespass offerings and the money for the sin offerings was not brought into Yahweh's house. It was the priests. Comment, this was according to the law of Moses. The money for trespass and sin offerings was rightfully the priests, Leviticus 5:15, 7:7, and Numbers chapter 18, and the king couldn't rightfully expect the priests to use it for the temple. But if the priests and Levites didn't intend to use any of their money for the temple, or go out to the cities and collect money as the king directed, they should have never nodded to the king in agreement. But they did nod their heads in agreement and failed to follow through. So we see the priesthood and Levitical system as a bureaucracy which poses as if it's doing something, but in actuality it does absolutely nothing unless pushed and supervised. That's ultimately the high priest Jehoiada's fault, but we have to give him credit for the heroic thing he did for hiding and crowning Joash and killing Athaliah. Now on the international front, verse 17, Then Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it, and Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. Comment, Gath was in the border country between Judah and the Philistines, sometimes under the control of Israel and sometimes not, 1 Samuel 7:14. In verse 17, Hazael, king of Syria, took Gath, but it's unclear from whom. At any rate, now he's preparing to attack Jerusalem. What's Joash going to do? Maybe consult Yahweh through the high priest as commanded in the law of Moses? Verse 18. Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the holy things that Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah, his fathers, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own holy things, and all the gold that was found in the treasures of Yahweh's house and of the king's house, and sent it to Hazael, king of Syria, and he went away from Jerusalem. Comment, dedicated means dedicated to Yahweh. All the gold the past 3 generations of kings had dedicated to Yahweh, plus what the people had just dedicated, and all the leftover, plus all that Joash had personally, he paid in ransom so that Hazael wouldn't attack. He didn't consult Yahweh because by this time Jehoiada was dead and Joash had abandoned Yahweh, 2 Chronicles 24:15 and 2 Chronicles 24:20. What happened is that when Jehoiada the priest died, some of the leading men of Judah approached Joash to convince him to, quote, serve the Asherah poles and the idols, 2 Chronicles 24:18. This was the source of Yahweh's disapproval and the reason Hazael was able to come from Syria and extort him. By then Jehoiada's son Zechariah was priest, 2 Chronicles 24:20-25. The Spirit of God came on Zechariah, and he chastised Joash for abandoning Yahweh. Shockingly, Joash had him stoned and also killed others of Jehoiada's sons, who also would have been priests, Exodus 29:9. So this is how Joash repaid the man who preserved him as an infant and made him who he was. He killed his sons. Now wrapping up the account of Joash, verse 19. Now the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? Comment, coming up, as clarified in 2 Chronicles 24:25, because Joash killed the priests, verse 20, His servants arose and made a conspiracy and struck Joash at the house of Millo on the way that goes down to Silla. For Josachar the son of Shimeath and Jehozabad the son of Shomer, his servants, struck him, and he died. And they buried him with his fathers in David's city. And Amaziah his son reigned in his place. Comment: Joash died at the age of 47 after being king for 40 years, assassinated because he abandoned Yahweh and made war on the priesthood, who called him out for it. In summation of this chapter, the priests didn't do the right thing unless Joash was looking over their shoulders, and Joash didn't do the right thing unless Jehoiada was looking over his shoulder. However, the craftsmen who did the work on the temple didn't attract anyone to look over their shoulders, quote, for they dealt faithfully. Joash never learned accountability, probably because his mentor Jehoiada went years without being accountable himself, without repairing the temple, until Joash pressed him on the issue. We will all give account, Hebrews 4:13. 2 Kings 13 is next at landofhavilah.net, 2 Kings 13. This is the map of 2 Kings 12. This is Jerusalem, and 22 miles to the west, Gath, which Hazael, king of Syria, took. 2 Kings 13 is next.